Today on The Nation Speaks, BLM rioting across the country in 2020 left a lasting impact, as we hear from Ann Dorn, the wife of one tragic victim, retired St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn, shot and killed by a looter. Next, BLM raised $90 million in the year after George Floyd's death. In America Q&A, we ask, do you recall hearing how that money was spent? Finally, in our second America Q&A, as the CDC loosens COVID guidelines, we ask, do you think the pandemic is over? Hello and welcome to The Nation Speaks. I'm your host, Cindy Drucker. George Floyd wasn't the only Black life killed the summer of 2020. After his death under the knee of now convicted Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, rioting, largely in Black neighborhoods, erupted across the country under the banner Black Lives Matter. In just 14 days, 19 people were dead. The damage tallied between $1 and $2 billion, according to insurance claims collected by Axios. One victim was retired St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn, father of 5, brother of 12, grandfather of 10. In the early hours of June 2nd, 2020, he responded to an alarm at his friend's pawn shop. A gang of looters broke in. David got in their way, and he was shot multiple times and killed. The entire grisly scene streamed on Facebook. The voices condemning police violence didn't condemn any of this violence, but the people impacted by it are still reeling from the aftermath. I sat down earlier with one woman whose life was changed forever. Joining us now is Captain David Dorn's formidable widow, a 28-year veteran of the force herself, Ann Dorn. Ann, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I am truly so deeply sorry for your loss. You shared with me earlier how much the two of you were looking forward to your own retirement so you could join him and travel together, and it's just heartbreaking. So I am really sorry for your loss. But I know it's not just for you and your family. It's what the community lost also when Dave was murdered. Could you start by just sharing with the rest of the country what the folks in St. Louis know, a little bit about Dave?
David was a police commander. Well, he was a policeman for 43 years. He served his community. He always wanted to be a police officer. As a kid, he dreamed of being a superhero. So what better way, than to be a policeman? And he loved his community. He served in almost every capacity there was within the community. And then he became the night chief, and he was like the community outreach officer almost at night. And he covered the entire city. And so many people got to know him. And if there was a problem, he got his officers in there full force and would try to fix it. So he was a problem solver for the community and for the police department. And he also took care of his officers along the way.
They lost one very good force of good, but another amazingly energetic community champion was born, yourself. I'm really amazed at all of the different things that you've been pouring your energy into to make your community better and safer since Dave's death. I know you've started a foundation, you've got a podcast, you're working with other organizations. It's really amazing to me, all the energy you've got. I'd like to talk about all of those things, but I want to start with one of them first because it affects a lot of people. And that is, you've been sort of going after BLM, or Black Lives Matter, the official organization, for the funds. They raised over $90 million last year after George Floyd was killed. A lot of that came from corporations. What is your issue with all of this? What are you trying to raise awareness about?
Well, BLM started out as a good idea to help Black communities and to come back and, rebuild communities and give back to communities, and also to help those who were killed in their communities, young lives that were taken. And, not one dime has gone back to their communities. It's gone into their pockets. And what we're doing is I've partnered with Concerned Communities of America and Pastor Mark Little and his group to go after these corporations who are just blindly throwing money at them, whether it be because they were bullied or because they actually believe in what is being preached. And they're just lining their pockets, and like we said, they're buying mansions, they're paying their family members to be security for them, or they're paying family members to be a secretary. They're just giving money away, but not back into their communities. They're not putting that money back where they promised it would go. And the communities are suffering, and they're still suffering to this day.
How bad was the damage in St. Louis?
There were probably 55 different businesses that were destroyed during the looting. I know Milwaukee got a stronger hit. A lot of buildings were set on fire up in Milwaukee. We had, I believe, one huge fire here. But it's astronomical. You know, we had 4 police officers shot the same night my husband was killed. You know, since that, in that year that they called for the violence, 73 officers across the country were murdered, and they called for their deaths, and they got them.
Have any corporations responded to you?
Only one so far, but they said they'd come to the table, but they haven't yet. So we're still giving the opportunity to step forward, but no one has yet.
And is it just public pressure that you're putting on them, or what? Are there lawsuits involved? How are you going after them?
No lawsuits. We are going after them. It's public pressure. We're addressing the CEOs and the board of directors directly. We've sent things to them. We've sent notices to them. We've asked them to sign a pledge. We have a website, www.concernedcommunities. You can go there yourself and sign up. Sign a petition to encourage people to encourage the corporations to sign the pledge. And you can see the video that myself and 2 other, a widow and a wife of an injured officer did with concerned communities to address the problem.
What else has been the impact of the aftermath of the riots that came after George Floyd was killed, so the summer of 2020, and especially in terms of the police force, which of course you were a member of for 28 years?
Yes, the administration has bowed down to them as well. A lot of mayors in certain cities do cater to them, and they've called for the defunding of police, and they're receiving it. Large metropolitan areas are suffering for lack of police officers. They're not hiring. They won't pay them. Our mayor herself has cut at least 100 jobs. We're 30 to 40% short on manpower just as far as police officers. That doesn't include our dispatchers and our civilian personnel. Our EMS trucks are at least 50% short. So the entirety of First Communities in a whole are suffering across the country. And the calling for the defunding of police has started it. And like I said, it's carrying over into our other first responders. So it's making our communities a lot more dangerous, and it's making the police officers' lives, it's putting their lives in jeopardy.
Can you be specific? What does it look like on the ground to have a deficit of 30 to 40% of the force?
Where you would normally have anywhere from 12 to 19 officers on a street in any particular district, and we have 6 districts within the city of St. Louis, you may have 2 officers in that. So if you go across the city, instead of having 120 officers on the street or 100 officers on the street, you may have 12 to 20 officers on the street at any given time. EMS usually runs 4 to 6 trucks. They had like maybe 2 trucks running the other night. So, and they're asking everybody to work overtime. So the burnout is getting critical as well.
What kind of hours are the officers working?
We normally work 8-hour shifts. They're working 12-hour shifts now, and it's mandatory. I know of some officers that worked 7 days in a row on 12 hours, which is unheard of in any other agency.
If somebody calls 911, what will they tell them if there's only, a handful of officers on the streets when there should be so many more?
You're going to get a recording. You're going to first get a recording telling you to stay on hold, and your call be answered. And it's going to remain on hold for 20 to 30 minutes probably. And once they get it, they'll take your information. If it's a minor incident, they may tell you that you're going to have to wait, and someone may call you back. More than likely, if it's a minor incident, you're not going to get an officer to respond to you. You'll get a phone call from someone, and it may not be a police officer. It may be a civilian taking your information. God forbid you've suffered a critical injury or you have someone having a heart attack. It's going to take a longer time for someone to get to you. So it is life-threatening that we're so short-staffed, because if seconds and minutes matter when you try to get life-saving support to someone.
So when you call, there's no way to vet everyone's on hold, right? If there's not an operator available.
Correct.
That's a frightening prospect.
Yes, it is.